Greetings everyone, DFG here, coming to you from the cemetery. Hey guys, hope everybody's having a very good Monday. Just want to take a minute and I want to bring up two subjects. The first around critical thinking, and then the second just a closing thought around the subject matter trust. I'll start with the latter first. Now yesterday, and this is my way of, again, provoking thought. And remember, with these videos are to inform, to educate, and to challenge, the thinking process. You know what I'm saying? It's to challenge all of us, to go beyond, the natural borders of obvious and look to see what else is out there, maybe to see what else is missing. When we think about things, when we make decisions, are we taking in consideration all of the evidence, all of the factual information that's available to you? Because, your decisions or decisions that anyone make could be the difference between life and death. And what I'm going to share with you in a moment, in one of these case studies, life and death had a lot to do with the decision-making process. But again, I'm going to start last first. And I just have one comment on the trust video that I did yesterday. All I'm trying to say in that regard is that, no trust, no relationship. And, and if you take the position that, I'm going to trust somebody, then you have to take that position understanding that there are risks involved. And if someone does fail you and somehow, then you have to step back and ask yourself, is the relationship, and is the trust inside the relationship worth forgiveness? And is it worth pressing on and pressing through, in the name of saving that relationship? Because maybe the relationship is worthy of, some form of sacrifice, some form of, forgiveness, some form of resilience, because that's why you decided to trust in the first place. Okay? But that's all I have to say about that. Again, it's information, something for you to think about. We all big boys and girls, and if you don't make your own decisions, then I'm going to be the first person to criticize you, call you a sheeple, for not taking the time to sort the matter out. So these videos are not necessarily for you to agree, but they definitely are being made to provoke thought and give you some different news, some straight perspective from one of your own. Obviously in this instance, me and the men of Gideon's Flight. That said, here's a question I like to pose and like to, just for you to think about. At what point do we recognize someone's behavior in terms of good and bad after they're dead? And I bring this up because of the recent passing of Senator John McCain. And also I was reading an article just the other day, and it was talking about Steve Jobs. And with John McCain, and I'll give you an example. John McCain right now is being, celebrated as this a great American, and in some ways I guess he is a great American, but my question in this instance is that, how great of an American is a great American? Because if playing by the rules and doing things with integrity, doing things with respect of life, the values that we profess that we have as Americans, if those are the standards, in other words, moral, always taking the moral high ground, is supposed to be the foundation of truth, of being an American, being, a good American. That's what we would tell our children. But when you go back, and I'll give you an example with John McCain. John McCain, was one of the states, he was the senator of Arizona, and Arizona was one of the last states to hold out of making Martin Luther King birthday a national holiday. And he was the senator of that state, and John McCain was against that, making King's birthday a national holiday in Arizona. And also, when John McCain was running for president of the United States, it was John McCain that refused to say that the Confederate flag in South Carolina should be taken down. And and we all know what the Confederate flag is its symbolism means. It was a secession movement. It was a part of the country declaring war on the other part of the country, and it was a part of the country that felt like it wanted to succeed and start its own country. In other words, it wanted to destroy the Union. and that was their rallying flag. Just like the Union flag that we have today is the standard flag for the United States. The Confederate flag is that flag of rebellion, a rebellious act, acts that would really constitute an act of terror, towards the national government. And so, and John McCain thought that it was a good idea for that flag to continue flying. And this is when he was running for president, of the United States against Obama the first time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that was the 2008 presidential campaign. Now, that's not to take away things that McCain did. And also, I'm sorry, in the first Gulf War, Article 54 in the Geneva Convention says that no matter what's going on, no matter who you're at war with, you cannot destroy their food supply, their water supply, their hospitals, anything that would harm the citizenry of that country that you're attacking. And McCain signed off with all of the senators to approve, polluting, the water system in Iraq. And I know that may not seem like a big deal, but how many of you guys know that 500,000 Iraqi children died from diseases and, and epidemics because of what the decision that was made with destroying their water supply, their water purification systems? 500,000 children. So what am I saying? Do we celebrate one's life, in terms of calling them a hero, and we dismiss everything that they did in life, as though it didn't happen in afterlife? In other words, while they're above the ground, we can be critical of them, but when they leave, we have to pretend like these things that we knew about them did not exist. The hatch mark, the dash, I guess, for a lack of a better word. And this to me is the conundrum, with, celebrating, people and blinding ourselves to accountability in the afterlife as much as accountability in life. And I'm not against celebrating afterlife. Of course I'm not, especially someone who's lost loved ones. But I am somewhat concerned if we're making heroes out of people who didn't necessarily conduct themselves in a very heroic, way. Now, the second, that's all for McCain. So if I offended any John McCain supporters, then I say I offend you respectfully. I'm not trying to be disrespectful in the man's death. I'm just trying to get some context around, what is acceptable behavior in life, and then how is that behavior recognized in death, or do we just forget the behavior in death? The second person is Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs is a guy that was notorious for his rudeness, his meanness, even his own daughter. You guys probably know this already, but Steve Jobs refused to take care of his daughter till she was 9 years old, to the point where he was probably a billionaire and had his daughter and her mother living off of welfare, literally in poverty. And the courts had to make him take responsibility for the daughter. And then once he did forcefully acknowledge it, once the DNA test came back and proved 100% that he was the dad, then he still treated the girl harshly by her own. She has a book out, you can look it up, and she'll tell you herself how mean and rude and truly evil her father was. And you say, okay, well, what does this have to do with the conversation? Well, how many times have you gone on the websites, LinkedIn, and see quotes from Steve Jobs? Are people quoting Steve Jobs, as though Job's Jobs, as though he was this high level thinking, perfect example of an inspiring leader. Well, was he? I mean, the people that worked with him, whether they were business partners or employees, said the man was horrible. He was a monster. And his own daughter said that, she couldn't find anything good to say about the man. Nothing. When I say nothing, goose egg nothing. But yet, he's looked at in heroic terms now, in terms of the great example of an entrepreneur, the great example of inspiring leadership. So when I say critical thinking, I'm just simply saying I think we should always question, a person's, I think we should be reflective in their passing, but I think we should be honest with ourselves to say, wait, your life has to be an example of what we say about you when you die. And I think because if we don't do that, then we become complicit. In other words, we start to compromise our own integrity by allowing ourselves to be caught up in emotionalism and giving kudos and giving recognition, in terms of edifying, or almost to the point of what's the word I'm looking for, where you almost make someone out to be a god in debt when they were the devil, in life. So we, what do you conclude from this? So, and that's a fair question that you should ask me. Well, what are you concluding from this, Dale? I'm saying this: if you want to be remembered in the afterlife as someone who had integrity, someone who had, patience, someone who was inclusive, someone who understood the importance of charity and goodness and kindness, someone who was unselfish, then you got to live that. And if you don't live that, then you shouldn't expect that in the afterlife. Not that these men did, but those who are here in the living should always remember that if we don't hold them accountable after death, then aren't we signaling to people that it's okay to be anything that you want to do and, destroy things? I don't want to say kill indiscriminately, but that's what I really want to say. Or treat people any kind of way, including your own children. And then, when you die, we'll call you great and we'll call you wonderful. Well, what message is that sending to the living? Could that message very well be we're telling, the living that, hey, you can live any kind of way you want to live, as long as you accomplish something great, as long as you become renowned, a person of renown, then it's all going to be forgotten in death. Well, what a horrible society we have created. What a terrible web we weave if that's going to be our approach. And so I bring it up in that sense, and I bring that up to the leaders amongst us, the men, the women amongst us who want to leave a good, positive mark. Then do that now. Do it the right way now. I'm not talking about being perfect. I'm talking about, doing things with a sense of reflection in terms of how you want to be remembered. So that when we go back and we want to recognize a John McCain, or we want to recognize Steve Jobs, or anyone else for that matter, we could do it with a sense of integrity by saying they lived an exemplary life. You know what I'm saying? In debt, they were what we're celebrating. Well, what we're celebrating in debt is what they actually did and how they lived in life. All right? So I hope that's okay. I hope you can relate to what I'm saying. And I guess what I'm really challenging all of us, starting with myself, is to be who we say we are. Okay? And at least try to be the best that you can be. And let's not get it mixed up. Let's not celebrate things that shouldn't be celebrated. And in the end, the last thing I want to say is give recognition to Aretha Franklin, the so-called Queen of Soul, who passed away also last week. Someone that, my mother was a huge fan of Aretha Franklin. We grew up listening to Aretha Franklin all day long as little kids. I mean, if there was no other music playing in the house, my mom was playing Aretha Franklin songs. Okay, so I think I know every song she ever made from the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s. So, anyway, condolences to Aretha and her family. And again, and love to each and every one of you guys for supporting me, supporting the men's group, Gideon's Flight, and what we're trying to do with this media, or this way of informing you and keeping you informed. Okay? Thanks, guys. Peace. Have a great Monday. See you on tomorrow. DFG, Gideon Flight. Hey, guys, don't forget, subscribe.